Hey everybody, good to see you all again. Hope you're doing well out there. It's good to have you back again. Hope you're having a great day. Last week we talked a little bit about bass lines. Today, what we're going to get into is something that we slightly hinted at in the last couple of weeks, which is over on the keyboard. We've spent most of the time on the white keys on the keyboard, what we call the natural notes, the letters of the musical alphabet, A through G. But of course, we've used the black keys for the most part as a way to find our way around the keyboard, know where we are. Are we near a group of two black keys? Are we near a group of three black keys? Which group of two and group of three black keys are we near from left to right? Well, today we're really going to get into what the black keys on the piano are, what sounds they make, and why they happen to go between the white keys, the different letters. They don't get their own new letter, they get a version of the letters we already use. A little bit of an identity crisis, too, depending on the direction you're going in. So, we're going to take a look at what the black keys are today, which will really open up a lot of opportunities for us to learn some other songs, because once we know the black keys in combination with the 7 letters of the musical alphabet, A through G, we'll then know every single pitch there is in music, all 12 of them. So by the time today's done, we're going to go from having 7 pitches that we know to having 12. So let's take a look at what that means. Alrighty, guys, so here we are back at our cheat sheet. I really hope you guys gotten the chance to make one of these throughout the year as we've gone through the different weeks and learn new things. We've talked about rhythm, we've talked about time signatures, the different symbols for rhythm, how to count them, the different rests, which of course are the silent versions of rhythmic symbols. These mean sound, that means silence. But the last few weeks we've been talking about pitch, right? Since we've been talking about the keyboard. And because today we're going to be talking about the black keys on the keyboard, we need to add some ideas that basically would go between each one of these letters in the musical alphabet. Now, you're probably thinking letters between letters. What are you talking about, man? And yeah, it's weird. So what we're going to talk about today are what we call in music something called accidentals. All right. Now, accidentals are things that we have to mark a note so that they appear differently than most of these normal letters. So let's take a look at what these can be. So first one that we're going to see quite often, there's really 2 different options. Every single black key is actually 2 different pitch names that sound exactly the same. So if you hear it in music, it's going to sound like the same sound. But when we write it down, sometimes there's actually 2 different ways of putting it. So what we will encounter are some symbols, which we've already seen when we did a song a few weeks ago here, was something that looked like a number sign next to a pitch. So maybe you had a whole note or a quarter note with a number sign next to it. However, this number sign is not a hashtag. We're not on Instagram. We're not on Twitter. All right. This is not a number. So this is what we call a sharp sign. Now, a sharp, we'll explain exactly what that means here in a little bit, but a sharp is going to change one of these letters to sound slightly different. Now, the other one we'll also encounter looks like a lowercase b, a little bit of a stylized lowercase b. However, no, we're not going to confuse that with the pitch B. All right, this is not a letter B. This is what we call in music a flat sign. Now, you may have heard the term someone singing flat before. Now, there is actually times when we want pitches to be what we call flat. Now, what does this mean? Why would we mark a pitch sharp or flat? Well, so a sharp sign makes a pitch higher. All right. So maybe if we had a pitch that sounded like F, which usually sounded like, so if the pitch F sounded like this, the pitch F sharp would be slightly higher, like this. Not quite as high as G. From F to G is a little bit further than F to F sharp. Hear the difference? Now, a flat sign does the opposite of a sharp. So if a sharp makes a pitch higher, a flat sign will make it sound lower. So sharps will make it higher, flat will make it lower. So let's take a look at exactly how this would sound. So if we're going to a flat pitch, let's say, for example, if we pick the pitch E, to go to E flat, it would be slightly lower. Not quite as far as going from E to D. A full letter back in the music alphabet, just halfway. E to E flat. Hear the difference? So there are times where maybe we have marked a note like F as a sharp or maybe E as a flat, that later on in the song we'll actually want to go back to using the white key F or the white key E instead of the black key version of them. So when that appears, we actually have to make a symbol to let us know that we're going back to the normal, or as we call in music, natural version of the pitch, just the plain old letter, white key. We'll only ever really see this symbol after a sharp or a flat sign is used. Now, to make this symbol, we make an L, and then we basically do an upside down L on top of it. So it creates this nice little grid kind of crossover thing. This symbol right here is what we call a natural sign. What does a natural sign do? Well, a natural simply just cancels a sharp or a flat sign. So if we ever want to get rid of a note from being sharp and take it back to being just a good old plain white key, you throw the natural sign on it, and then it stays as a white key. Or if you want to make something no longer be a flat and just make it back to being the white key version of it, you put the natural sign on it. Let's take a look at the keyboard here and identify all of our sharps. So if we take a look across the keyboard here, we can of course see the groups of 2, 3, 2, 3, and so on. So hopefully we remember that this is C. Now, if the next key up is D, then of course this one right here is between C and D. So this is a higher version of C. So this would be C sharp, not quite as high as D. This right here would be the higher version of D because you're going up from D but not as far as E. So you would have D sharp. Now, of course, after D sharp, there is no black key between E and F. So technically there would be no E sharp. If you ever saw an E sharp, you would just play an F because it's the next thing higher than an E. From F, we go up to F sharp. From G, we go up to G sharp. And from A, we go up to A sharp. There is no black key between B and C. So there is no B sharp key. If you ever saw a B sharp, you would just play the next thing higher than a B, which happens to be a C. Now, after that, we end up back at another C sharp, the beginning of a group of 2 black keys, just like here. So the 5 sharps are C sharp, D sharp, F sharp, G sharp, and A sharp. But now that we know all of the sharps, now we have to identify all of the flats. Now, for the flats, there is no necessary difference between the keys. It's the same 5 keys that we're going to be using, the group of 2, group of 3. And of course, that repeats. So we'll just go in the opposite direction. All right, if this is C, we said there's no black key. So technically, if you ever saw a C flat, you would just play a B, which is a white key. But for the actual black keys, going down from B, we make a B lower. Now, what was A sharp, a higher version of A, is also a lower version of B. So we can call that A sharp B flat. Going down, lower than A, we could call G sharp A flat because it's a lower version of A at the same time as being a higher version from G. We could call F sharp also a lower version of G, so it could be called G flat. Now, of course, going down from F, there we said there was no black key. So if you ever saw an F flat, you just play an E natural, but that's not something you see very often. Going down from E, this black key would be a lower version of E, so we call that E flat. And then this black key is going down from D, so we would call that a D flat. So your flats, B flat, A flat, G flat, E flat, and D flat. These 3 symbols are what we're going to call our accidentals, which are kind of adjustments to pitches throughout music. Now, these do happen very often, and not every time that's a sharp or flat is being used, what we call an accidental, but there's a theoretical reason for that down the road. If you do play any amount of music and you start to read music, you will encounter these sharps and flats quite often because they're part of the system of music. And now that we know our sharps and flats, we have 12 different pitches. Because remember, there are 5 sharps and 5 flats, along with the original 7 pitches that we use in the musical alphabet. So we have 7 natural pitches and, of course, 5 sharps and 5 different flats. Occasionally, if you ever get deep into music, you will encounter what they call a double flat, which literally looks like they just have 2 B's next to each other, or a double sharp that almost looks like a little X next to a note. It's a full-on different symbol. But that's really pretty advanced stuff that we are not going to even get to here at all. So we're going to move away from that. And just as long as you guys know this and understand how to identify these on the black keys of the keyboard, that's really the point of today. Now, this is all fun and dandy, but why don't we go ahead and find a song that uses some of this? All right, guys, so we're running a little bit short here on time for part 1. So I'll see you guys back here in a little bit for part 2.